Thank you. Thank you indeed for organizing, and I also join thanking the organizers of this wonderful conference, and I'm sure that the results of this conference will have a huge impact on the cause that we're pursuing, protecting human rights and protecting the religious freedoms. In my capacity, being a representative of the Republic of Armenia before the European Court of Human Rights, have initiated a lot of lawsuits before the courts since the beginning of the 44-day war of 2020, and that includes a very wide scope of rights being protected and pursued, starting from right to life, freedom from torture, and right to private and family life, and right to property, and including also right to freedom of religion and conscience. I think that's also including. And unfortunately, throughout this past war, we have been witnessing horrendous scenes of destruction of cultural heritage, Armenian cultural heritage, Christian Armenian cultural heritage, monuments, churches, and chapels, cathedrals, and many more, and also desecration of gravestones, graveyards, and many instances, which actually falls under the protection of the European Convention. Just being a council, I'll try to be very brief. I'll try to just give you a very brief summary of what's the factual background of what's happening, what has happened, and also giving some thoughts on the legal aspects of this, or legal assessment of the factual grounds, and how I see, or how we see, this should be protected under the European Convention, and not only European Convention, but also other maybe international instruments. First and foremost, I think it's not only that's the first 44-day war is not an isolated incident of destruction or desecration of cultural monuments or Christian cultural heritage. This is unfortunately, it's a systematic pattern of behavior which has been implanted there, which has been there actually for centuries. And if you look at the history, it goes back to the Ottoman Empire times, when Armenians were subjected to rampant persecutions, and also the Greek, Assyrians, Maronite people, and other Christian communities within Ottoman Empire were targets of this violence and discrimination and oppression, which eventually, I think, was brought to the Armenian genocide, and also that also included not only the killings and persecution of people, but also destruction of cultural monuments and destruction of Christian heritage of the Armenian people. The purpose was that to erase the traces of Armenians on the territory of Ottoman Empire. I think this kind of behavior later on, like a century later, or not even a century, I think right after the Armenian genocide, I think, and when the Soviet Union was created and the Azerbaijan and Armenia were Sovietized, I think starting from that moment when and orders were given to also create so-called histories for many new joining nations, including, I think, Azerbaijan. I think it all started, this so-called falsification of history, which I think then by year, by decade, I think it was getting a new impetus. And what happened throughout the history of the Soviet, during the Soviet time, I think that's pretty clear what happened under the jurisdictional or within the territories of Soviet Azerbaijan, or including Nakhichevan and other parts, also Artsakh. I think there has been a very constant and consistent policies of diminishing Armenian minorities, Armenian ethnic presence there, and including by destructing cultural monuments and Christian heritage presence of Armenians, and along with the falsification and examples of falsification of history. One of the, I think, this didn't end, I think, when the USSR collapsed. I think it continued on, and during the independent Azerbaijan era, I think one of the very highlights of this destruction and discriminative policy was that when in Nakhichevan nearly 100 Christian Armenian churches and cathedrals were destroyed and turned into mosques, while one of the largest, oldest historic Armenian cemeteries, or with over 20,000 decorated cross stones, khachkars dating from 9th to 16th centuries, was completely leveled and obliterated. And this has been confirmed by many and numerous international forensic reports, and the evidences are there. Like, the purpose of doing that, of course, that's just, again, erasing any Armenian trace or presence on the lands, and that's motivated with so-called racial hatred. Unfortunately, this is the background or backstage where this comes from. I think the cause or the root cause of the destruction of the monument, the destruction or desecration of the Christian monuments, and the eagerness to present it in a way that Armenians have never been here. So that has its historical roots. Unfortunately, when the war started, the 44-day war, I mean, back in 2020, starting from September, lasting until the beginning of November, we have also witnessed many examples of deliberate targeting of Armenian Christian monuments. One of the very big highlights of that was like two separate attacks, hours apart actually, occurred on Ghazanchetsot Cathedral on the 8th of October on town of Shushi, and which was, I think, which is one of the very prominent examples of the Armenian Christian heritage in Artsakh. And not only that, but also the complete destruction or elimination of Almighty Holy Mother God Church in Mekhakavan. That's also been throughout the war, and which was reported again. Or St. John the Baptist Church of Shushi, built in 1818, commonly known as the Green Chapel, also stands. It has been also targeted. There has been videos which shows that the Green Chapel with its dome and bell tower destroyed due to damage apparently caused after the war, during the wartime. And not only that, but also these visits by the political leadership of Azerbaijan to different settlements there. For example, in March of this year, March 15, President Aliyev visited Azerbaijani-occupied Sakuri village of Adrut region, the southern region of Republic of Artsakh. And the village was renowned for its 12th century Tsakhkavang and monastery. The monastery, however, has not survived the test of the time. The place of the early medieval monastery, in the place of the medieval monastery, in the 17th century, Holy Mother of God Church stands. And the church, too, was almost ruined during the Soviet period, and its reconstruction was initiated in 2019 with the assistance of private donors. In that video, which is circulated in Azerbaijan media, shows President Azerbaijan in the company of his wife and daughter in Tsakhkavang making the following statement: "This is an ancient Albanian cathedral, an Albanian church. Armenians tried to Armenize it too. They added the inscriptions here in Armenian, however, they have not succeeded. And should this be an Armenian church, would Armenians leave it in such condition? It looks like barn, like a garbage dump, etc. And this is our ancient monument, etc." I think again, this is one of the, again, flagrant examples of denial of the Armenian history and cultural heritage, which has been a consistently main thread in Azerbaijan's policy, starting even not only the Soviet time, also during the independent Azerbaijan times. I think there are many other examples. Unfortunately, the examples are building up over time. They're not ending. I think it's a very I just cited an example of the targeting and attacking the Surprazanchezo Cathedral in Shushi, but it didn't end there. I think after the Azerbaijan gained control of the Shushi, the cathedral was subjected to vandalism, and it has been. They started to alter the cathedral and obliterated the dome of the cathedral, and doing any other alterations and removing the angels from the construction of the cathedral, and doing other steps deliberately to erase any Armenian presence in that town too. So this is just overall describing what's there happening, and unfortunately this persists. And what is being done for documenting, not only documenting, but pursuing or presenting this to the international community in July or in well-organized manner. Of course, one of the main forums in this connection is the European Court of Human Rights, where there is an application submitted in the name of the Holy Armenian Apostolic Church, and which presents all these violations and destructions, and as a violation of the fundamental rights guaranteed under the European Convention of Human Rights. And the main aspects that this kind of policies, this kind of conduct is directed is, I'll just try to be very brief, summarizing the main human rights that are being breached and violated by this kind of behavior. The first and foremost, of course, that's Article 9 of the European Convention of Human Rights, which is the freedom of conscience and religion. As recognized by the European Court's case law, it implies the freedom of manifest one's religion alone, in private and in community, with others, in public and within the circle of those whose faith one shares. I think this article, according to the case law of the court, is quite wide, and it encompasses many aspects of the freedom of religion, and including, I think, when the religious sites are being targeted, destructed, and the access to religious site is being denied. And that directly violates the guarantees of this article and human rights guaranteed under this article. And not only that, but also the same right is guaranteed also by Article 1, Protocol 1 of the European Convention, which guarantees the right to property, that also is interpreted in a manner to include also the cultural heritage sites and religious sites too. And of course, not only that aspect, but also the fact of desecrating and destructing and destroying the Armenian Christian sites and monuments also is leaving a huge psychological impact on the followers of the Armenian Apostolic Church, which in itself is a violation of Article 3 of the European Convention of Human Rights, which prohibits torture or any inhuman degrading treatment. The case law of the court is pretty straightforward in these terms, and this aspect of the right is clearly protected under the European Convention of Human Rights. And last but not least, as I was pointing out in the beginning of my presentation, these acts are not an isolated incident of destruction or vandalism. They are like a very organized thread of a unique policy of intolerance and racism against Armenians, ethnic Armenians, Christian Armenians, and which of course is also prohibited under Article 14, which is the prohibition of discrimination. This is just a very brief overview of the standards or the main principles based on which the European Convention provides protection. And of course, the court will consider this case, and I hope that the court will come up with a judgment which gives a proper legal qualification of all of this, what's happening there. And of course, there are other instruments that are out there, should be used as well. One of the main instruments which is directly connected to the to the subject matter that I'm presenting now is the Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination. Just an update that I'm sure that if you have seen that, you have forgotten that, but there has been a note on the Ministry of Foreign Affairs website back in 2020, November 13th, a press release which stated that Armenia presented claims and addressed to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Azerbaijan, blaming and presenting its allegations on violation of the rights guaranteed under this convention, which is a fundamental instrument of public international law, guaranteeing an erga omnes or providing erga omnes obligations, which is a fundamental. And I think by this I'll conclude my presentation, and thank you again for the organizing this event.